Hello and welcome back to another deep dive. Today we are tackling a subject that is basically the background radiation of our entire lives. It's something that is happening to you right now, even while you're listening to this. Your cells are regenerating, the weather's shifting outside your window, your mood is fluctuating, the economy is, well, it's doing whatever the economy does. We are talking, of course, about change.
The only constant, as the old saying goes. It really is the one thing in life that is absolutely 100% guaranteed.
Exactly. It is the universal truth. But here's the thing that I find so weird and honestly a little bit frustrating. For something that happens all the time, for something that's totally inevitable, we are remarkably bad at talking about it.
We really are.
We stumble, we get awkward, or we just use these really blunt, clunky words that just don't capture what's actually going on inside our heads.
It is a paradox, isn't it? We spend our entire lives in some form of transition, moving jobs, changing diets, ending relationships, starting new hobbies. But when it comes time to actually articulate that process, to explain it to someone else, we often just freeze up.
Yeah, we do.
We default to, very binary language. I quit. I started. I moved.
Black and white.
But the actual experience of change is, well, it's almost never that clean. It's rarely a straight line from point A to point B.
Right. It's messy. It's full of maybe and kind of, and I'm terrified, but also, really excited. It's a spectrum. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We have a fascinating stack of source material to get through. It centers on a dialogue, essentially a case study called The Language of Change and Life Transitions.
And what I love about this material, what I think is so brilliant, is that it functions on two distinct levels. On the surface, if you just glanced at it, it looks like a guide to English usage. How to use grammar to describe shifting circumstances. It looks like a linguistics lesson.
Just a technical manual.
Right. But if you look just an inch below the surface, it's actually a deep dive into the psychology of how we frame our own evolution.
That is the key. That's everything. It's not just about whether you use, the past perfect tense or a continuous verb. It's about why you would choose to frame a story that way. Maybe to protect your ego or to manage someone else's expectations or even just to validate your own feelings.
Precisely. We are going to look at how language actually shapes our reality during these big pivot points. Because the words you use to describe your life, they really do influence how you experience your life. And we have a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to talk about that restless phase in our careers, that little itch that starts it all. And we're going to talk about the art of softening language to sort of manage that fear of commitment.
We are also going to talk about how to reframe failure so it doesn't feel like a complete catastrophe. And we have a hilarious story about a deformed ashtray to illustrate that one. Then we're going to get into lifestyle overhauls, things like diet and exercise and, digital detoxes.
It is a full menu, a really packed agenda.
It is. The mission for this deep dive is pretty simple. We want to move you from, stumbling over your words when life throws you a curveball to having a nuanced vocabulary that captures the process of change, not just the result. Because honestly, the result is usually the boring part. I got the job. Okay, cool. But the process, the fear, the preparation, the doubt, that is where the drama is.
That is where the story lives. And frankly, that's where the human connection happens.
So shall we jump into the first major theme? Let's talk about the anatomy of a career pivot.
Let's do it. This is such a classic scenario. I think almost everyone listening has either faced this or, they probably will at some point. In our source material, we are introduced to a character named Emma. Now, Emma is a software developer. She has been doing it for about 8 years.
Okay, so she's established. She isn't a rookie just starting out. She has put in the time. She has the expertise. On paper, she's a success story.
Exactly. But she introduces a word to her friend John that I think is the catalyst for almost every major life change we go through. That word is restless.
Restless. It is such a loaded word, isn't it? It's not unhappy. It's not angry. It's not even burnt out necessarily. It's just itchy.
It's an itch, yeah. It is a signal. And in the dialogue, Emma admits she's feeling restless despite having this stable, successful career. She says, and this is interesting, I am more interested in getting into teaching English as a second language, funnily enough.
Funnily enough. I love that little addition. It's a minimizer, right? It's like we apologize for our dreams before we even fully state them. We minimize our true desires right out of the gate because we're afraid they sound ridiculous.
We do. We hedge. We put a little cushion around it. But let's look at the why here, because it's really telling. She's a coder. She sits behind a screen. She deals with logic and syntax all day. But she tells her friend John that she's been volunteering with refugees, helping them learn English. And here is the kicker, the part that really says it all. She admits she looks forward to the volunteer work more than the paid job.
That is the breadcrumb moment. I love that idea. We often dismiss our hobbies or our volunteer work as just, extra things we do on the side. Oh, that's just my Saturday morning thing, huh? But so often they are data points. They are evidence of what we actually value deep down.
Emma highlights a massive contrast here. The paid job feels like an obligation, a duty. It pays the bills, of course. But the volunteer work, that feels like a reward. It feeds her spirit. It gives her energy. She is realizing that the human connection she gets from teaching is worth more to her than maybe the technical isolation of coding.
So she has this realization. She has followed the breadcrumbs, but she doesn't just, walk into her boss's office and flip a table and quit.
No, that's what happens in movies.
Right. Not in real life. And this brings us to the linguistic focus of this deep dive. How does she describe this phase? She doesn't say, I am a teacher now.
No, and this is so crucial. She uses continuous verbs. She says things like, I'm considering, I've been feeling, I'm taking an online course.
Okay, so why does that matter? Why is the grammar so important here?
Because change isn't a light switch, it's a dimmer switch. It's a gradual process. When you use continuous verbs, I am exploring, I am thinking, you are validating the process. You're giving yourself permission to be in the middle of it. You're allowing yourself to be in that murky water between one shore and the next.
Right, because if you only focus on the destination, I got a new job, you miss the entire narrative arc of how you got there. It also takes the pressure off, doesn't it? If I say, I am considering a career change, I haven't promised anything to anyone. I haven't made a big declaration. I'm just looking at the menu. I haven't ordered yet.
Exactly. It buys you psychological safety. You are testing a hypothesis without committing to the results. And Emma is very honest about the emotional spectrum here. She's not just excited. She tells John she is excited about the meaning behind the work, but she is terrified about the money. She explicitly says, it is all about the money, isn't it?
I love that honesty, because we so often try to present these sanitized, Instagram perfect versions of our life changes. Oh, I'm just following my passion. The universe will provide. But the reality is usually more like, I'm following my passion and I'm also deeply worried I won't be able to pay my rent next month.
And acknowledging that duality, that the excitement and the terror can exist at the exact same time, that's what makes the narrative authentic. It's what makes it human. If you only tell people the good parts, they can't connect with you. They just think you're superhuman or, maybe a bit delusional.
Right.
But if you say, I really want this, but I'm scared to death about the finances, people lean in. They go, oh, I get that. I've been there. That vulnerability is the hook.
So Emma is in this in-between stage. She's coding by day, learning to teach by night. This leads us right into our next section, which is all about the strategy of softening language. Because once you start telling people you might change your life, they start asking questions. When? How? Are you sure? Why? And that can be incredibly stressful.
It can be very high pressure. If you tell everyone, I'm going to quit my job and become a teacher, you have now created a public deadline for yourself. You have created an expectation. And if you don't do it, or if you change your mind, you feel like you failed. So the source material suggests using what it calls softeners.
Walk us through these. What exactly defines a softener in this context?
Well, the simplest example is the difference between will and might, or will and could. So instead of saying, I will change my job, which sounds like a done deal, you say, I might change my job, or I could see myself changing careers in the future.
It sounds so simple, but it changes the entire energy of the conversation, doesn't it? I will feels like a contract. It's rigid. I might is like a daydream. It's flexible.
It does. It signals possibility rather than certainty. It opens a door instead of building a wall. And there are other phrases the source highlights, things like exploring the possibility of, or looking into, or transitioning to.
Transitioning to is a great one. It sounds so professional, so intentional. It sounds like you have a spreadsheet for your life change. I am currently transitioning to a new sector.
It signals prudence. It shows you aren't just being impulsive. Emma actually uses this. She says she is exploring a possibility of teaching online while still developing software. That tells the listener, I have a safety net. I'm being responsible. I am not burning the ships before I even land on the shore.
And that validates the in-between stage, which is so important. I think we live in a culture that absolutely hates the in-between. We want things to be settled. We want to be A or B. But life is mostly the line between A and B. That's where we spend most of our time.
And linguistically, we need to inhabit that line. We need to get comfortable saying, I'm researching, or I am testing the waters. It protects you. If you decide not to make the change, you haven't broken a promise. You just finished your research phase, and the data said, nope, not this one.
So let's say you do the research, you make the jump. Or maybe you try to make the jump and you fall flat on your face. This brings us to section 3, narrating the past and what we call failures. Because let's be real, not every pivot works out. Sometimes you try something new and it is complete and utter disaster.
And this is where the source material gets really interesting with grammar as a storytelling tool. They bring up the past perfect tense.
Okay, let's unpack that. I have to admit, I haven't thought about past perfect since probably 10th grade English class. Give us the refresher.
It sounds technical, but it's actually quite simple. It's just using had before the past participle of a verb. For example, I had studied French before I moved to Paris. And towards it sets up a timeline. It tells the listener very clearly, this thing happened before that other thing happened.
Why is that important for storytelling, though? Why can't I just say, I studied French and then I moved?
You can, but the past perfect emphasizes the sequence and, more importantly, the preparation or lack thereof. I had never taught English before I started volunteering. That really emphasizes the novelty, the jump into the unknown. It sets the stakes. It helps the listener understand the context of the change. It says, look at this gap in my experience and look at how I tried to bridge it.
Okay, so that sets the stage. But what about when the stage collapses? The source material tells this hilarious story about a pottery class that really resonated with me.
The deformed ashtray incident. I love this one. So John and Emma, our characters in the dialogue, apparently took a pottery class together at some point.
And we can all picture this, right?
Yeah.
They probably saw some beautiful, calming video on social media. You know, the clay spinning perfectly, the creative energy flowing. They thought, this is it. This is my new mindful hobby.
Exactly. And the reality was they were just terrible at it. Completely hopeless. Emma says her pot looked like a deformed ashtray.
Just a lump of gray sadness sitting on the wheel. I've been there.
But here is the key, the language. How do they talk about it? They don't say, I am a failure as an artist. They don't say, I am incompetent.
No, they reframe it. The source suggests these wonderfully gentle phrases like, I didn't stick with it, or it didn't pan out.
It didn't pan out. I use that all the time. It's such a gentle, no-fault way of saying, this was an absolute disaster and we shall never speak of it again.
It externalizes the failure. The situation didn't pan out. It removes the blame from I failed. The source also mentions John trying to learn Spanish on Duolingo. He says very simply, I didn't stick with it.
And notice he adds context. He doesn't just leave it there. He realized he needs a structured environment. He says he needs a class with a teacher and classmates, not just an app dinging at him. So the learning isn't that he's incapable of learning Spanish. It's that the method was wrong for him.
That is the crucial lesson. It wasn't a failure. It was a data point, a piece of information. They learned pottery wasn't for them. John learned Duolingo wasn't enough for him. That is valuable information. Knowing what you don't like is just as important as knowing what you do like.
So you take the failure and you actively look for and extract the silver lining. The source suggests phrases for this too, like, I learned a lot about myself, or I gained some valuable experience.
Even if that experience is just, I have now learned that I really hate getting clay under my fingernails.
Right. But sometimes the silver lining is, well, it's heavy. It's not all easy lessons. Emma mentions her TFL course, the one she is actually succeeding in. She says it is more work than expected. She says, I wasn't expecting it to be quite so intensive.
And that's a really important reality check. Sometimes the change we want, the thing that is right for us, comes with a heavy lift.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that difficulty doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means you're being realistic. You can love the goal, but still struggle with the path to get there.
Exactly. And admitting that struggle makes you more credible. If everything was easy and fun, everyone would do it. The challenge is part of what makes it worthwhile.
So we've covered career shifts and hobbies that crash and burn. Now I want to talk about one of the most stressful changes a human being can go through: moving. And specifically the sensory experience of adapting to a whole new place.
This is section 4 in our outline, and it really emphasizes that moving isn't just a logistical problem. It's not just about boxes and trucks and signing a lease. It's about your entire nervous system being rewired.
The source talks about using specific adaptation vocabulary. Phrases like struggle to adapt, challenging to settle in, get used to.
Settle in is such a beautiful phrasal verb. I love that one. It implies a process of sedimentation, like dust settling after a big storm. You don't just arrive and boom, you are home. You have to settle. It takes time for the dust to clear and for you to see where you are.
And the source material really emphasizes using sensory details to explain why that settling process is so hard. Emma talks about her first experience on the subway in a new city.
Yes. She doesn't just say the subway was different, that's boring. That tells us nothing. She says it was loud, crowded, and overwhelming.
Those words trigger something visceral in the listener. We know what loud feels like in our bones. We know the feeling of being crowded. We can almost smell the subway air and hear the screeching brakes just from those words.
Exactly. If you want people to empathize with your change, you have to give them the sensory data. If you just say, it was hard, that is abstract. But if you say, the noise level was so high I couldn't hear myself think for a wink, that is concrete. It invites the listener into your body, into your experience.
The source also makes a great point about using adverbs to grade these emotions. So not just, I was happy, but I was incredibly happy, or I was somewhat nervous.
Nuance is everything. Somewhat nervous tells a very, very different story than terrified. It helps the listener calibrate exactly where you are on the emotional spectrum. It prevents them from overreacting or underreacting to your story. It's more precise.
Now, what about when you have to convince someone else that your big change is a good idea? Emma talks about convincing her family to let her study abroad when she was younger.
This is the rhetoric of persuasion. She taps into some classic techniques. She uses phrases like once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
That is a classic sales pitch right there. It creates scarcity. It creates urgency.
It is. If I don't do this now, I never will. But she also, very smartly, focused on the growth and the benefits. She didn't say, I want to go have fun and party for a year. She framed it as, I will learn and grow and become a more well-rounded person.
So the expert insight here is, effective communication about your change requires connecting with the listener's emotions. You have to anticipate and address their fears, in this case, her parents' fear for her safety, by offering them a higher value, which was her personal growth.
Empathy, that's what it boils down to. She understood they were scared, so she gave them a reason to be brave for her. She framed the change not as a danger, but as a development.
That is so powerful. Okay, let's pivot from geography to biology. Let's talk about lifestyle overhauls. Section 5, health and habits. Because John and Emma have some really strong and I think very relatable opinions on this.
They do. And what I find fascinating here is the core theme. It's the shift from intensity to sustainability. I think that is basically the maturity curve of health and wellness.
Let's start with John. He used to be a classic gym rat, right? Lifting heavy weights, ego lifting, all about chasing the biggest numbers on the bar.
Yes. But then, and this connects right back to that restless phase we talked about, he noticed a signal. But the signal wasn't a vague feeling, it was pain, recurring injuries, constant soreness. He realized he wasn't agile. He was strong in one direction, but he was stiff.
So his pivot was from looking big to longevity. He switched his focus to mobility and flexibility.
And that is a huge mental shift. It's moving from an aesthetic goal to a functional one. It's realizing that the goal isn't just how you look today, it's being able to tie your own shoes when you're 80. It's shifting from performance to maintenance.
And Emma had a really similar realization when it came to her diet. She talks about the trap of restriction.
Right. Calorie counting, avoiding carbs, all the things we're told to do, we have all been there. And it almost always leads to burnout. It's that classic crash diet cycle. You starve, you binge, you feel guilty, and you repeat.
Her solution, which I love, is the big salad.
The big salad strategy. It's so simple. Veggies, grilled chicken, a nice vinaigrette. It sounds basic, but the philosophy behind it is actually profound. It's about adding good stuff in, rather than just focusing on subtracting bad stuff.
That is such a key distinction. It's an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
When you focus on what you can't have, you feel deprived all the time. But when you focus on what you can have, a giant, delicious, satisfying bowl of food, you feel abundant. You feel good about it.
Exactly. And John mentions his stir-fry approach, which is the same idea. You take leftovers, some tofu or chicken, throw it all in a pan. It's easy, it's fast, it's not a big production.
And the key phrase they both use, the one that ties it all together, is it's a lifestyle change, not a temporary fix.
That is the golden rule right there. If you can't see yourself doing it in 5 years, it's probably not going to work for the next 5 weeks.
And linguistically, notice how they talk about it. They don't use words like forbidden or cheat day or sinful. That's all gone. They talk about sustainable balance, enjoying food. The vocabulary is so much softer, which makes the habit stickier.
It completely removes the morality from eating. Food isn't good or bad, it's just fuel and enjoyment. That linguistic shift is absolutely essential for long-term success.
So we have covered career, location, health. Now we need to talk about how we relate to other people. Section 6, professional evolution and social health.
This starts with a very, very relatable struggle for anyone who has ever been in a leadership role. The manager's dilemma.
Emma is a manager now, and she admits she fell right into the classic trap of trying to do everything herself.
The classic bottleneck. She probably thought she was being helpful, or maybe she just wanted control, but it led to total unsustainability. She was burning the candle at both ends, and probably her team was feeling micromanaged.
So the pivot for her was learning to delegate.
And delegation is a form of communication. It's a language in itself. It requires incredibly clear expectations and consistent feedback. Emma says the hardest part was learning to trust the team.
That is hard. Trust is a risk. If they mess it up, it still falls on you as the manager.
It is, but she advises starting small, hand off routine, low-stakes tasks first, see how they do, build that trust muscle over time. And the result, an easier life for the manager and higher engagement for the team.
It's a total win-win. But you have to get over that initial hurdle of thinking, it's just faster if I do it myself.
Which is usually a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the short-term discomfort of teaching someone else.
Totally. Now, John has a different social struggle. He describes himself as a former people pleaser.
The conflict avoidant personality. He says he used to avoid any kind of conflict at all costs.
I think a lot of our listeners will resonate with that one. Yes, I can help you move on my only day off. Yes, I can finish that report by midnight. Yes, I will organize the entire office party by myself.
Meanwhile, you are just dying inside.
Exactly. You are trading your own peace of mind for their temporary approval. It's a terrible trade. So his big shift was learning to be direct and to set boundaries respectfully. And Emma agrees. She talks about learning to say no as a tool to prevent burnout.
Learning to say no is probably the most important linguistic skill anyone can learn in the modern world. It is a complete sentence. No explanation required.
It is the ultimate boundary. And if you can't say no, your yes doesn't really mean anything, does it?
That's a great point. And this leads directly into their discussion on digital wellness. Because sometimes the person we need to say no to the most is our own phone.
They talk about social media as a time suck and the phenomenon of doom scrolling. Doom scrolling. It's such a vivid, perfect term. Just that endless thumb swipe, absorbing one piece of bad news after another, getting more and more anxious, but being physically unable to stop.
It puts your brain in this passive state of high alert. It's like running on a treadmill and going nowhere. It consumes your time without giving you anything of value back.
And the solution they discuss, they bring up the concept of JOMO.
The joy of missing out.
I love JOMO. It is, without a doubt, the best acronym of the 21st century.
It completely flips the script on FOMO, the fear of missing out. With FOMO, you feel like a loser because you're sitting at home while everyone else is at the big party. With JOMO, you reframe it. You find contentment in staying in. You celebrate the quiet.
You're not missing out. You're opting in. I am choosing to rest. I am choosing to read. I am choosing to be bored and let my mind wander.
Speaking of reading, they have a funny contrast in their preferred escapism. Emma is reading a biography of Marie Curie.
Very highbrow, very intellectual. Good for her.
And John is reading Game of Thrones.
Very dragons, very bloody. Also good for him.
But both are valid. The point is, they are choosing an active form of relaxation reading over the passive, draining experience of social media.
It's about reclaiming your attention. Reading demands something from you. It engages your brain. Scrolling just demands your eyeballs.
Exactly. And that small change, putting the phone down and picking up a book, is a form of taking control back. It's a small but powerful act of change.
So, we have dissected the anatomy of change from all these different angles. We've looked at the grammar, the psychology, the social dynamics, the health aspects. Let's try to synthesize this for the listener. What does this all mean when you put it together?
If we look at the big picture, the core philosophy here is that change is inevitable. You cannot stop it. The seasons change, we get older, markets shift, it's all happening all the time. But, and this is the crucial part, how we handle it and specifically how we talk about it is optional.
We have a choice in the narrative. We are the editors of our own life story. We hold the red pen.
We do. We can choose to frame giving up on pottery as gathering data about our hobbies. We can choose to use softeners like might and could to give ourselves the breathing room to explore without pressure. We can choose to focus on the sensory details of the journey rather than just the black and white result.
And we can choose vulnerability over pretending everything is perfect.
Yes. Admitting that things didn't pan out, or that you are terrified about the money, or that your beautiful pot looks more like a deformed ashtray. That vulnerability is actually a strength. It makes you real. It connects you to other people. It invites help and empathy.
There was a brief mention in the source about fake it till you make it. How does that fit in?
Well, I think that's really just another way of saying practice the behavior until it becomes your identity. Use the language of the person you want to become, even if you don't quite feel like that person yet. In a way, you can speak your new reality into existence by changing the words you use to describe it.
Change is an opportunity for self-discovery. It's not just something that happens to you from the outside. It's something you actively participate in.
Exactly. You are not a victim of change. You are a co-author of it.
Okay, we like to end these deep dives with a bit of a challenge or a provocative thought for you to take away. Here is what I want you, the listener, to do.
Go ahead.
I want you to identify just one area in your life right now where you are feeling restless. Just one. It could be big, like your job. It could be small, like your living room layout, or even your boring breakfast routine.
And then just consider, what softening language could you use to start exploring that change today? You don't have to say, I will change this. That's too much pressure. Just try saying to yourself or to a friend, I'm looking into, or I am considering, or I'm sort of exploring the idea of.
See how that feels. See if it opens a tiny door in your mind. See if it lowers the anxiety just enough to let you take the very first, very small step.
Small words can lead to very big moves.
That they can. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Keep exploring. I was looking through the stack of research we have for today, and it triggered a very specific, almost visceral memory for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's that feeling of sitting on the edge of the bed on a random Tuesday morning. You're just staring at your shoes and knowing in your bones, you cannot live the same day you lived yesterday.
Right. The something has to give moment.
Exactly. You need to change. But then you stand up, you put on your shoes, you grab your keys, and you go do the exact same thing anyway.
The universal human paradox. We are absolutely desperate for evolution, but we're biologically wired for stasis. It is probably the most frustrating conflict in the human condition.
It is maddening.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking on the deep dive today. We're looking at mastering the language of change. And I want to be clear right off the bat, when we say language, we aren't just talking about, syntax or grammar or vocabulary lists, even though our source material is technically a linguistic dialogue.
No, not at all. We are talking about the internal monologue, the coding language of behavior, the scripts we run in our heads that either keep us stuck or, help us move forward.
We're working with a really unique source today. It's a series of transcripts from the Advanced Learner Studio, featuring a dialogue between two hosts, Emma and John.
Right.
Now, if you just glance at this, you might think, okay, this is an English lesson for C2 learners. Why are we analyzing this?
Which, to be fair, on the surface it is. It's designed to teach idioms and phrasing.
Yeah, sure. But that is the Trojan horse. Because once you strip away the vocabulary exercises, what you actually have is this candid, almost painfully relatable case study in behavioral psychology.
Exactly.
You have two people dissecting their own failures, their awkward pivots, and their attempts to find this Japanese concept of ikigai, or life purpose.
I think that's why this source is so valuable for us. Usually when we read about change or pivoting, we're reading some polished self-help book, right? It's written by someone who has already made it. They're standing on the mountaintop yelling down at us about how easy the climb was.
Right. Just follow these 5 simple steps.
Exactly. Emma and John, they are right in the mud with you. They are messy. They are failing at pottery. They are fighting with their families about eating meat. It's raw.
And that's what we want to extract. We want to figure out, how do you actually break the physics of a rut? Not the motivational poster version, but the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
How do you stop doom scrolling when your brain is literally begging for that dopamine hit? And how do you look your friends in the eye and tell them, I'm not the person you think I am anymore?
It's a masterclass in navigating friction. You've got internal friction, social friction, and just the friction of being bad at new things, because the middle part of change is always, always messy.
Always. So let's set the big question for today's deep dive. How do we move from being stuck in a rut, that feeling of just grinding your gears, to finding a genuine sense of purpose? And perhaps more importantly, how do we manage all the awkward, embarrassing parts in between?
Because if you aren't willing to be embarrassed, you aren't going to change.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
So let's get into the physics of this. The source material starts with this feeling of being stuck. And they use a phrase that feels a little old-fashioned, but I think is actually quite technical if you break it down, being in a rut.
It's funny you call it technical because rut is originally an agricultural term, isn't it? Or a travel term from, the wagon days.
Right, a wheel track.
Yeah.
In a muddy road.
Exactly. Imagine a muddy road, a wagon goes down it, it leaves a depression in the mud, the next wagon comes along, and it naturally slides into that same depression because it's the path of least resistance. Over time, that groove gets so deep that the wall of the rut is higher than the axle of the wheel. At that point, you literally cannot turn the wheel. Even if you want to go left, the physics of the road forces you straight.
That is actually a little claustrophobic when you apply it to your daily life. It implies you've lost agency.
It should feel claustrophobic because biologically, that is exactly what a habit is. It's a neural rut. Your brain wants to save energy. Thinking is expensive. Deciding is expensive. So if you did it yesterday, your brain lubricates the pathway to do it again today. That is inertia.
And in the source, we see this compared to the physics concept of inertia. In physics, inertia is the tendency of an object to do nothing or to remain unchanged.
Right. An object at rest stays at rest.
Yeah, if it's sitting still, it wants to stay sitting still. If it's moving in a specific direction, it wants to keep going that way.
And human beings are just biological objects with a lot of inertia. We are habits wrapped in skin. Breaking that inertia requires an external force greater than the resistance.
And in our source material, Emma provides a perfect example of trying to find this force. She describes this feeling of disconnection. She realized she was in that rut. She was just going through the motions. And her solution wasn't some grand, calculated 5-year plan. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was something she describes as being out of left field.
That phrase, out of left field, is so key here. It means unexpected, unforeseen, coming from a direction you weren't even looking at.
She decided to volunteer at a local animal shelter.
And what I love about the source detail here is the sheer randomness of it.
It's great.
She didn't grow up dreaming of this. She isn't a veterinarian. She just saw an ad and thought, why not?
That why not is the inertia breaker. The expert analysis here suggests that when you are in a rut, the specific activity matters less than the novelty of the activity. The value lies in doing something completely different from your normal day-to-day. You have to shock the system.
You have to force the wagon wheel to jump the track. Exactly. It doesn't matter if you jump into a ditch or a field of flowers, you just have to get out of the track.
Yeah.
If you do the same things, you think the same thoughts. If you want new thoughts, you need new inputs.
Right. And she mentions that the essential part wasn't, saving the world instantly. It was just the feeling of making a real difference, even if it was just walking a dog or cleaning a cage.
A tangible impact.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This wasn't her first attempt at breaking the rut, was it?
No, and this is such a crucial detail for anyone listening who feels discouraged because they tried a new hobby and they just hated it. We have to talk about the misshapen ashtray face story.
I loved this detail. It's so relatable. I feel like I've made that ashtray.
We all have.
Yeah.
So before the animal shelter, Emma tried pottery. She thought, okay, I need to be creative. I need to work with my hands. She goes to the class. She sits at the wheel.
The full ghost experience.
Oh, a little less Patrick Swayze, a little more disaster movie. By her own admission, it was a total failure. She tried to make a vase, and it came out looking like a misshapen ashtray.
We have all been there. You have this beautiful vision in your head of the art you're going to create, and reality just hands you a lump of mud.
But here is the key insight from a behavioral standpoint. The pottery was a failure of output, but it was a successive process.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
She didn't become a potter. The vase was ugly. But the act of going to the class, getting her hands dirty, and failing, that loosened the mud of the rut.
Hey.
It proved to her brain that she could do something different, even if the result was bad. If she hadn't made the ugly ashtray, she might not have had the courage to then go sign up for the shelter.
So the failure is a prerequisite.
Often, yes. We tend to view our hobbies or our pivots as binary, success or failure. If I'm not good at it immediately, it was a waste of time. But if the goal is breaking inertia, then being terrible at pottery is just as effective as being great at it. You are still breaking the routine.
That is such a liberating distinction.
Yeah.
I think we often feel like if we try to change and it doesn't click immediately, we should just go back to the couch.
That's the inertial talking. That's the wagon wheel trying to slide back into the groove.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say we manage to find that left field activity. We sign up for the shelter or the class or salsa dancing. Now we run into the next problem. The boring, cold, hard wall of reality.
It's logistics.
The resource exchange. Time and attention.
Yeah, the source material is very clear on this universal truth. You cannot add new things without subtracting old things. Time is a zero-sum game.
It is. And we often try to cram change into the margins of our lives without making real space for it. I'll just sleep an hour less.
Yeah.
Or I'll listen to the lecture while I'm in the shower.
Right, multitasking our way to a new life.
Which doesn't work. Emma explicitly states she had to make a sacrifice. She used to spend hours on social media. To make the shelter work, she had to cut losses on that time.
She basically swapped scrolling for strawling. Walking the dogs, I mean. Nice one. But yes, she had to reallocate that resource of attention. And this brings us to a term John introduces in the dialogue, which is all too familiar to most of us. Doom scrolling.
Ugh. The bane of modern existence. John describes it so viscerally, it's not just checking the news, it's a physical spate he gets into.
For those who might have lived in a cave for the last 5 years, doom scrolling is the act of spending excessive screen time just absorbing negative news. You just keep scrolling, and it's disaster after disaster. Floods, politics, scandals.
And John admits in the source that this ruins his mood. It's not just a waste of time, it's an active drain on his mental state.
Yeah.
He feels heavy afterwards.
That's the trap he describes. And it's designed to be addictive. It appeals to our evolutionary need to scan the horizon for danger.
Right, our lizard brain is looking for the saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly. And the algorithms are fighting against your willpower. You are bringing a knife to a gunfight if you think willpower alone will stop it.
So what's the tactical solution here? Because just stop doing it is easier said than done. That's like telling a smoker to just not smoke.
Well, John offers a very specific strategy. He talks about shifting to being mindful about his media consumption. But he doesn't just rely on being mindful.
He uses a tool?
He uses a tool. He mentions the Freedom app.
I found that interesting. He's basically outsourcing his discipline to software.
Which is an incredibly smart move. The app blocks distracting websites and apps for a set period. He describes it as a game changer. If you can't trust yourself not to check the news, you make it impossible to check the news.
You put yourself in a digital straitjacket for an hour.
Pretty much. And you get your life back in that hour.
And notice the strategy he uses regarding the amount of time. He didn't say, I'm never looking at a screen again. He didn't throw his phone in the ocean.
No.
He limits consumption to something like 30 minutes a day.
That is the key to sustainable change. Going cold turkey often leads to a rebound binge. It creates a scarcity mindset where you obsess over the thing you can't have. Limiting consumption is a management strategy. It acknowledges that you need to stay informed, but you refuse to be inundated.
So we have broken the inertia, and we have carved out the time by cutting out the doom scrolling and locking our phones.
Yeah.
Now comes the part that I think stops a lot of people in their tracks. It's not the time and it's not the effort, it's the people.
Ah, yes, the social friction. The tribe does not always like it when one of its members changes their stripes.
Right. How do you tell your friends and family you are different now? John has a really interesting strategy for declining invitations or explaining why he isn't around as much.
He does. He avoids the hard no, making a big dramatic announcement like, I'm a new person and I do not have time for your trivial gatherings.
Which would definitely lose you some friends. And probably get you uninvited from everything forever.
Yeah. Instead, he uses the casual mention strategy. He integrates the change into his excuse naturally. Oh, I can't meet up tonight. I'm volunteering at the shelter. It normalizes the new behavior without making it a confrontation.
And he also reframes the negative into a positive. I thought this was brilliant. Instead of saying, social media makes me miserable, so I'm quitting, which sounds a bit like a complaint.
And this is important, it sounds like a judgment on people who do use social media. If you say social media is toxic, your friend who is scrolling Instagram right in front of you feels attacked.
That's a great point. So he flips it.
He flips it to, I'm prioritizing my mental well-being.
It's unarguable.
It is a masterclass in framing. Who can argue with prioritizing mental well-being? It shifts the conversation from, why aren't you doing what we do, to, look at this positive thing I'm doing for myself.
But sometimes casual mentions aren't enough. Sometimes the change is right in your face. And the source gives us a specific case study that I think is hilarious and painful in equal measure. John's dietary changes.
The meat issue, yeah.
This felt like a sitcom sketch. John decided to stop eating meat as much.
Yeah.
And his family, they did not take it well.
No, they viewed him as the meat-loving guy. That was his label in the family dynamic. Maybe he was the guy at the BBQ who always manned the grill.
Right, that's his role.
And when he tried to change that, they were resistant.
Why is that? I mean, why does his family care what he eats? It's his stomach.
Because changes in one person often impact the group equilibrium. It can feel like a rejection of the group's values. If the family bonds over BBQ and you reject the BBQ, the subconscious question they are asking is, are you rejecting us?
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So how did he handle it? Because he didn't cave, but he also didn't start a war at the dinner table.
He used the I statement strategy.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does that sound like?
Well, the goal is to prevent the conversation from escalating, becoming more intense. He didn't say, eating meat is bad for the planet and you are all wrong.
Right, which would immediately put everyone on the defensive.
Immediately. Instead, he used phrases like, I feel,
Yeah.
or I need.
Like, I need to do this for my health.
Exactly. Or, I feel better when I eat this way. It keeps people off the defensive. You can't really argue with someone's internal feeling. You can argue with a fact. You can argue about carbon emissions or protein intake, but you can't argue with, I feel sluggish when I eat steak.
It de-escalates the conflict immediately. It makes it about him, not them.
And he coupled it with compromise. This is the other side of social friction. Radical change often requires interpersonal flexibility to stick. John still eats meat occasionally when dining out, but he chooses vegetarian at home.
He didn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Precisely. He found a middle ground that allowed him to pursue his values without alienating his support system. He realized that maintaining the relationship was worth the occasional burger.
That is such a crucial lesson.
Yeah.
Change doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can be a mostly vegetarian or a sometimes volunteer.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of learning these new things. Because once you've cleared the time and handled the family, you still have to actually do the thing. And usually, the thing is hard.
The messy side of learning. I love that the source material doesn't sugarcoat this at all. They share these stories of absolute, abject failure.
The juggling disaster is a definite highlight.
Walk us through this, because I think we've all been John here.
So John decides he wants to learn to juggle. He goes to the University of YouTube, he watches the videos, and in the video, the guy makes it look effortless.
Deceptively simple, as John calls it.
Right, and that's the YouTube competence illusion. You watch someone do it, and your brain's mirror neurons fire, and you think, I get the concept. Throw, throw, catch, catch. Easy.
And then he picks up the balls.
And he could barely manage to. Balls flying everywhere, hitting the ceiling, hitting the cat. It was a complete disaster.
And then there's the baking flop. That's Emma's story.
Oh, Emma. She followed the recipe exactly. She measured the flour. She set the timer. She did everything right. But the cake came out flat and rock hard.
Brick.
A delicious looking brick. And John's surfing story, spending the entire time wiping out and only managing to stand for a few seconds at a time.
These stories are funny, but they serve a very important psychological purpose in our discussion, don't they?
They absolutely do. They illustrate the reality of what we call the gap. The distance between your taste, knowing what a good cake tastes like or what good juggling looks like, and your actual ability.
So what are the takeaways here? Besides, juggling is hard and baking is chemistry.
Well, humility for one. John explicitly mentions gaining a new appreciation for actual jugglers. He realized the skill involved. But more importantly, acceptance. Realizing it is okay to be bad at something.
That is a hard pill to swallow for high achievers, isn't it? We want to be good immediately.
It is. We are conditioned to seek success. We want that dopamine hit of the win. But the expert analysis of these stories suggests we need to reframe failure. Every wipeout on that surfboard isn't a sign to stop. It's a data point. It's a learning opportunity. You learn what not to do next time.
The source uses the phrase throwing oneself into the deep end.
Right. Starting a difficult activity without a lot of preparation or guidance, it requires a willingness to look foolish. And if you are unwilling to look foolish, you are unwilling to grow. You have to be willing to be the person chasing the tennis balls across the room while everyone watches.
That connects perfectly to the next big topic in the source material, confidence. Because if you're going to look foolish, you need some kind of armor. And specifically, the source brings up that very controversial piece of advice. Fake it till you make it.
Yes, this is always debated. Is it lying? Is it manipulation? Is it authentic?
Emma has a very nuanced take on this, which I appreciate. She argues it's not about faking expertise.
Right.
She's not saying you should walk into a hospital and pretend to be a brain surgeon.
Please, for the love of all that is holy, do not do that.
No. But she talks about projecting confidence, as if you have it, in order to build actual confidence through action.
It's behavioral activation. The relationship between feeling and acting is a two-way street. We think we need to feel confident to act confident, but actually, if you act confident, if you stand up straight, speak clearly, look people in the eye, your brain starts to release the chemicals associated with confidence. The feelings follow the actions.
The expert analysis calls this a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. By acting confident, you take risks. You raise your hand in the meeting. You speak up. You try to juggle the third ball. Those actions lead to feedback and improvement, which then builds actual confidence. So the fake confidence jumpstarts the engine of real competence.
We have a great case study of this with Emma learning Spanish. This was a really practical example of how to apply this without feeling like a total fraud.
She was paralyzed by fear. She was too afraid of making mistakes to speak. She knew the grammar, but she couldn't open her mouth because she didn't want to sound stupid.
Which is the catch-22 of language learning. You can't learn if you don't speak, but you can't speak well until you learn.
It's a trap. So her fix was fascinating. Step 1, self-talk. She started narrating her day in Spanish just to herself. I am walking to the kitchen. I am making coffee. The cat is hungry.
I love this because it creates a safe space. No one can judge you if you're talking to yourself.
Exactly. It breaks the barrier of silence. It just gets the mouth moving. Step 2 was accountability. She found an online language partner. But notice the progression. She started in the safety of her own head before moving to a real person. She faked the conversation with herself first.
And John had a similar experience with his job, right? This wasn't just about a hobby for him.
No, this was high stakes. He mentions his current job was a huge step up. He felt completely overwhelmed. Classic imposter syndrome. He looked around and thought, everyone here is smarter than me. They're going to find me out any minute now.
So he used the fake it strategy.
He did. He acted like he knew what he was doing. But look at the specific behaviors he mentions. He asked questions, he researched, and he volunteered for projects outside his comfort zone.
So he wasn't pretending to have answers he didn't have.
No, he was acting like a person who was capable of finding the answers. He didn't hide. He leaned in. He acted like someone who belonged there until he actually did belong there.
It really emphasizes that confidence is a verb, not a noun. It's something you do, not something you just have.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Now, speaking of verbs and doing things, we have to talk about when to stop doing things. Because sometimes mastering the language of change doesn't mean starting a new habit. Sometimes it means saying, I quit.
The pivot. This is where we get into the heavy hitters, sunk costs, and the art of cutting losses.
Emma shares a story about running. She decided she was going to be a runner. She bought the shoes. She downloaded the app. She hit the pavement. She tried it for 3 months, and she hated every single second of it.
It made her miserable, and so she stopped. Now, some might call that quitting. Some might say she gave up. But the expert distinction here is crucial. There's a difference between pushing through discomfort, which is necessary for growth, and persisting in misery.
How do you tell the difference? Because running is uncomfortable. Your lungs burn. Your legs hurt. How do you know if it's good pain or bad pain?
That's a great question. Discomfort usually comes with a sense of progress or challenge. You finish the run and you feel proud, even if you're tired.
An accomplishment.
Exactly. Misery is stagnant. It drains you without giving anything back. You finish the run and you just feel angry and depleted. Emma recognized that running was misery for her, so she cut her losses.
And this leads us to the sunk cost trap.
Yeah.
Can you define that for us?
A sunk cost is a cost that has already been incurred and cannot be recovered. Money, time, effort. The trap is when we continue doing something just because we have already invested in it. I can't quit this job. I've been here 5 years. Well, those 5 years are gone regardless of what you do next.
The source gives us the story of Sarah, who is a friend of theirs.
Right. Sarah is the cautionary tale and also the hero of her own story. She climbed the corporate ladder. She invested years. She played the game, but she burned out completely. She realized she was climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall.
So she quit.
She quit to start her own business.
And the insight there was that she realized her old definition of success just wasn't working for her anymore.
Precisely. The change was as much about letting go of the old identity, Sarah the executive, as it was about starting the new one. She had to accept the loss of those corporate years to gain her future. She had to be okay with people asking, why did you throw that great career away?
And John is facing a similar massive pivot in the source material. This is arguably the emotional core of the dialogue, isn't it?
It is. He's considering leaving finance. He has 10 years of experience. That is a massive sunk cost. That is a decade of his life.
And he wants to go into photography. I mean, that is a huge leap. That's not just a lane change. That's getting off the highway and driving into the forest.
It is. The fear of failure is incredibly high. But he uses a reframing technique that's really powerful. He views his past failures and his current risks not as endpoints, but as stepping stones.
How so?
He realizes that the skills he learned in finance organization, client management, discipline will actually help him run a photography business. Nothing is truly wasted. It all becomes part of the journey.
And this connects to a Japanese concept mentioned in the dialogue that I think grounds all of this. Ikigai.
Yes, ikigai. It's a beautiful concept. If you visualize a Venn diagram with 4 circles, one circle is what you love.
Okay.
One is what you are good at. Another is what the world needs. And the last one is what you can be paid for.
And Ikigai is the center, where they all overlap.
Ikigai is the sweet spot in the middle where all 4 overlap. It roughly translates to a reason for being.
It sounds like the holy grail of life planning.
It is, in a way, and the relevance here is that people like John are looking for alignment with their values, not just a paycheck. The source mentions that studies show pursuing passion leads to fulfillment. It's not just a hippie daydream, it's a deep psychological need.
Right.
John is realizing that finance might pay him, but it doesn't fit in the what I love circle anymore.
So we have covered small habits, social friction, learning skills, and major career pivots. There is one last area the source touches on that I think acts as a catalyst for all of this. If you are truly stuck and you can't figure out your ikigai and you can't even juggle, what do you do?
Buy a plane ticket, the perspective shift of traveling.
Right. The host discusses how a simple change in physical location can change your mental processing.
Yeah.
It literally rewires the brain.
It does. When you are in your living room, your brain is on autopilot. You know where the remote is. You know what the air smells like. When you are in a new environment, new smells, new language, new light, your brain has to pay attention. This state of heightened awareness is incredibly fertile ground for change.
Emma tells a story about Morocco. She got lost in a market.
This is a classic travel moment. It's sensory overload, spices, noise, heat. She's lost, she's vulnerable, she doesn't speak the language.
And an old man selling spices helps her out.
He uses gestures, he uses broken French, he guides her.
And the takeaway wasn't, I learned directions.
No, the takeaway was connection. Connection despite the language barriers. Empathy. Realizing how much humans have in common, it broke her out of her bubble.
And the expert connection here.
It connects right back to embracing discomfort. That is where the magic happens. You have to get lost to find that connection. You have to leave the familiar to experience the universal. You have to be willing to be the confused tourist to become the citizen of the world.
So if we look at this entire dialogue as a whole, what are we really seeing?
We are seeing a roadmap. We start by identifying the inertia, the rut. We break it with something random and out of left field, the animal shelter. We manage our resources by cutting out things like doom scrolling with the freedom app. We navigate the social friction using I statements. We embrace the humility of being a beginner dropping the juggling balls. We project confidence to build it. We learn to cut our sunk costs when they lead to misery. And finally, we aim for our ikigai.
It's a comprehensive journey. It moves from the micro waking up on a Tuesday to the macro changing your entire career.
It is. And it reminds us of that concept mentioned by John regarding upskilling. Whether it's project management or photography, we are constantly building stepping stones. Nothing is wasted.
And I want to remind you, the listener, of one small detail Emma mentioned. Amidst all these big pivots, she mentioned something tiny: meditating for 10 minutes a day.
Even the small changes count. You don't have to quit your job today. You don't have to book a flight to Morocco. You can just meditate for 10 minutes. That is also breaking inertia. That is also carving a new, better rut.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the language of change, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. We talked about fake it till you make it, acting as if you are the person you want to be. And we talked about how the goalposts have shifted, how your definition of success evolves.
Here's the question.
If you started acting as if you already have the life you wanted today, right now, which current habit would be the first one you'd have to drop? Not add. We always talk about adding habits. What is the one thing you would have to drop immediately to be that person?
That is a scary question. Because we all know the answer instantly, don't we?
We do. And that fear, that's the inertia trying to hold on.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to say, looking at the stack of research we have on the table today, I'm feeling a very specific type of friction. You know that feeling when you decide, okay, this is the year I'm going to learn French, or I'm finally going to master the piano, or I'm going to completely change how I show up in meetings at work.
Oh, yeah. Every January 1st.
Every January 1st.
Yeah.
And then you just hit a wall.
The wall of reality.
Exactly, the wall of reality. It's that moment when the excitement of the new thing just wears off and you are left with the sheer grinding difficulty of actually changing your brain.
It is the classic adult learning paradox.
Yeah.
We spend our childhoods as these incredible learning machines.
Right. We're sponging.
Total sponges. Our brains are plastic. We fall down, we get up, we fail constantly, and it's just expected. But then we hit adulthood and we sort of calcify.
Calcify is a great word for it.
We curate our lives to avoid that feeling of incompetence. We stick to the things we are already good at. So when we decide or are forced to learn something new, the resistance is immense. It feels, I don't know, like trying to bend hardened steel.
It really, really does. And to explore this friction, we are doing something a little different today. We aren't looking at a business book or a scientific paper directly.
No.
We are doing a deep dive into a conversation from the Advanced Learner Studio. Now, on the surface, if you just glanced at this source, you'd think, oh, this is a resource for people learning English at a very high level.
Right.
It's a dialogue between two hosts, Emma and John, and it's designed for C2 level learners.
Which is fascinating in itself, because when you are operating at a C2 level, that's, mastery, you aren't really learning grammar anymore. You're learning nuance.
Yes.
You're learning psychology. You're learning culture.
Right. And that is exactly why we picked it. It's a Trojan horse.
I like that.
While they are ostensibly teaching vocabulary words like muscle memory, inertia, bottling up, the substance of their conversation is actually a masterclass in adaptability.
Yeah.
They aren't just teaching words, they are dissecting the psychological mechanics of how we grow.
They essentially provide a roadmap for overcoming inertia. I mean, they talk about everything from the physical pain of playing a guitar chord to the social terror of public speaking.
The terror.
And even the cultural confusion of moving to a new country like Italy.
And trust me, there are some stories in here that are going to make you wince with recognition. We've got the reason why a simple G major chord can feel harder than leading a corporate meeting.
Oh, it absolutely can.
The absolute dread of the spotlight, and this is my personal favorite. Why keeping your sourdough bread failures a secret is actually a recipe for disaster in your professional life.
That sourdough analogy is surprisingly profound. It really gets to the heart of how we process failure.
It really does. So here's the mission for this deep dive. We are going to strip away the language lesson aspect and extract the psychological insights.
To get to the good stuff.
We are going to look at the vocabulary of growth and the practical strategies for overcoming that inertia we all feel. So let's jump right into the first segment, the physiology of practice.
Okay, this is where we meet John. And John is in the thick of it. He has been on a journey for 2 years to learn the guitar.
Now, 2 years, that jumped out at me immediately because 2 years is a very specific, dangerous time frame when it comes to learning a skill.
It is the valley of death for hobbies.
Right. The novelty is long gone.
Oh, yeah.
You weren't getting those little dopamine hits of, oh, look, I learned a new note every day. You're just in the grind.
And John calls it a reality check. And I love that honesty. He says, it's been a real journey, a lot of frustrating moments, but also some real moments of accomplishment.
He doesn't give us the movie montage version.
No.
Where he buys a guitar and 30 seconds later he's shredding a solo on stage.
Not at all.
Real life doesn't have a montage sequence. It has hours of your hand cramping.
Mm-hmm.
And John pinpoints the specific source of that frustration. Coordination. He says, getting my fingers to do what my brain wants them to do.
That is the universal struggle of the adult learner. Intellectually, the task is simple. Place index finger on 3rd fret.
I can understand that sentence.
Your brain understands that instruction perfectly. It's not complex theory, but your hand acts like a claw. It refuses to obey. There is a total disconnect between the command center and the troops on the ground.
And this brings us to the first major concept the source unpacks: muscle memory. Now, we throw this term around a lot, in sports or music, but the source defines it very specifically.
Yeah, they do.
The ability to reproduce a movement without conscious thought, acquired through repetition.
The key phrase there is without conscious thought. That is the holy grail of skill acquisition.
Why is that the goal? Why is getting rid of conscious thought so important?
Because conscious thought is expensive. Biologically speaking, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles conscious decision-making, is an energy hog. It's slow.
Okay.
When John is struggling with that chord change, he is manually driving his fingers.
Right.
Lift the ring finger, move it 2 millimeters left, press down. It's exhausting.
It sounds exhausting.
It's clunky.
It's like when you first learn to drive a stick shift. You're thinking about the clutch and the gas and the blinker and the mirror and the road.
Yes.
You are just overwhelmed.
Exactly. Muscle memory is the process of offloading that work to the basal ganglia, the ancient part of the brain that handles patterns and automatic behaviors.
Yeah.
Once a skill moves there, it becomes fluid. It becomes fast. It becomes, as the source puts it, second nature.
Second nature. I love that idiom. It implies it's almost part of your biology now.
And in the source, John shares a really critical moment that I think anyone listening will relate to. He's in a lesson. He keeps messing up a chord change. He's getting angry. He's frustrated. He feels like he's hitting that wall we talked about. And his teacher steps in.
And what does the teacher say? I feel like this is a crucial bit of advice.
He says, don't worry. It's all about muscle memory. Just keep practicing, and eventually it will become second nature.
That reassurance is so vital, isn't it? It reframes the struggle.
Completely.
It tells John, you aren't broken. You just haven't built the neural pathway yet. The road isn't paved.
Exactly. It normalizes the struggle. But I want to pivot to something you just mentioned. The teacher. Because this is a major plot point in John's story. He didn't start with a teacher.
Right. He started the way we all start in 2024. He went to the internet. He watched online videos.
The self-taught route. It's very appealing. It's free. It's low pressure. You can do it in your pajamas at 2 a.m.
But it didn't work for him. He explicitly says, I tried teaching myself at first, but I wasn't making much progress.
Right.
So he hired a teacher. And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Why is paying someone to sit there while you struggle so effective?
It comes down to two things that John highlights: personalized feedback and external accountability.
Let's break those down. Personalized feedback seems obvious. A YouTube video can't see that your wrist is bent at a weird angle.
Correct. A video provides a generic model. It shows you what perfect looks like, but it cannot diagnose your specific deviation from perfection. A teacher can look at you and say, John, drop your shoulder. One tiny micro correction can save months of bad practice. But the bigger factor, honestly, is the accountability.
John admits this freely. He says, it's also helpful to have someone to hold me accountable. Otherwise, I might just skip practice.
That phrase, hold someone accountable, is key here. It means ensuring follow through. When you are accountable only to yourself, it is so easy to negotiate. We are excellent at negotiating with ourselves.
Oh, we're master negotiators with ourselves. Oh, I had a hard day at work. I'll practice twice as long tomorrow.
And we never do.
We never do.
We never do. But when you have to show up on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and show another human being what you've done, the dynamic shifts completely. You do the work because you don't want the shame of showing up empty-handed.
It's positive pressure.
It is.
Yeah.
It prevents you from drifting along.
Drifting along. That's another great vocabulary nugget from the source. To drift along means to move without direction or purpose.
And that is the default state of adult life if we aren't careful. We drift through our weeks. We drift through our careers. We drift through our relationships. Learning a difficult skill like guitar is an act of rebellion against drifting. John refused to drift. He realized his self-taught method was essentially drifting, so he anchored himself with a teacher.
So we have the physical struggle of the guitar, the battle against the fingers, but then the source flips the script and introduces Emma's challenge.
Yeah.
And if John's challenge was about coordination, Emma's challenge is about pure, unadulterated terror.
Public speaking.
The number one fear. Some surveys say people fear it more than death, which implies that at a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy.
It is an irrational but incredibly powerful fear. And Emma says she wants to improve her public speaking for her job.
Okay.
Now listen to John's reaction. He doesn't say, oh, good for you. He basically says, you are insane.
He does. He says, I'd rather learn Italian, and play guitar in public than speak in public.
I want to pause on that statement because it establishes what we can call the bravery scale.
The bravery scale, I like it.
Think about what John is saying. He is willing to perform a complex, fine motor skill, the guitar, which he is still learning.
Right.
In a foreign language, Italian.
Which he doesn't know.
In front of strangers.
Yeah.
Rather than just stand there and talk in his native language.
That is wild when you break it down like that. Why is speaking so uniquely terrifying compared to playing music?
Well, it comes down to vulnerability and the barrier. When you play an instrument, there is an object between you and the audience.
The guitar.
You are channeling the performance through the guitar. If the audience hates it, you can blame the song or the acoustics or the instrument itself. But with public speaking, you are the instrument.
There's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. If the audience disconnects, it feels like a rejection of your personality, your intellect, your very being. It triggers that primal, tribal expulsion fear, the fear of being cast out.
So how does Emma handle this primal fear? She doesn't just read a book about how to win friends and influence people. She takes action.
She does.
She joins a public speaking club.
And again, notice the pattern. She didn't try to solve it in isolation.
No.
She put herself in a room with other people. This is essentially exposure therapy.
Or, as the source implies, desensitization.
Right. She puts herself in the environment that scares her repeatedly. And the result she describes is very, very realistic. She doesn't say, and now I love the stage, I am fearless. She says, I still get nervous, but I'm much better at managing my anxiety.
That is such a crucial distinction. We tend to think confidence is the absence of fear.
Right.
But Emma is teaching us that confidence is the management of fear.
You don't get rid of the butterflies, you just get them to fly in formation.
I love that image. And she shares a specific technique that helped her manage it. She had a realization about the power of narrative. She says, people connect with stories, not facts and figures.
This is a huge aha moment for anyone in the corporate world. We have all sat through those presentations that are just slide after slide of data points and bullet points.
It's physically painful, it's dry, it's boring.
And it's unmemorable. But more than that, hiding behind data is a defense mechanism. It keeps the audience at arm's length.
Okay, so it's a way to not be vulnerable.
Exactly. Emma realizes that to be a good speaker, she needs to be authentic. She needs to share personal experiences.
And John points out something really meta here. It's quite clever.
Yeah.
He says, think about how we were talking about Sarah's coding and my guitar playing. Those are stories that bring the topic to life.
He's absolutely right. If they just sat there and said, learning is difficult because of neuroplasticity and cortical mapping, it would have been a lecture.
And we would have tuned out.
We would have. But by saying, I can't get my fingers to move and I wanted to smash the guitar, it becomes a story. It becomes relatable.
Authenticity is the secret sauce. It humanizes the speaker. And when you are human, the audience roots for you. They want you to succeed.
Exactly. Authenticity lowers the stakes. You weren't trying to be a god on a pedestal.
Yeah.
You were just a person sharing a story.
Right.
And that makes the fear manageable.
So we've talked about physical skills with the guitar. We've talked about performance skills with speaking. Now let's talk about environment. Because sometimes the change isn't about what you can do. It's about where you are.
This is the segment on cultural adaptation.
The When in Rome segment. John brings up a friend who moved to Italy to work remotely. Now, on paper, moving to Italy sounds like the ultimate dream.
Oh, yeah.
Pasta, wine, history, beautiful landscapes.
La dolce vita. The sweet life.
Exactly. But the reality was a massive shock to the system.
It's called culture shock for a reason. It is a psychological disorientation. And John mentions the biggest shift for his friend wasn't the language or the food. It was the pace of life.
Yeah, coming from a high-pressure corporate job, probably in London or New York, to the Italian style of working.
A completely different universe.
John says things don't always happen as quickly as he was used to. The focus is on building relationships and enjoying life.
Now, for someone coming from a time is money, efficiency-obsessed culture, that can be incredibly frustrating.
You'd be pulling your hair out.
We tend to view slowness as incompetence. We view a long lunch as laziness. But in that context, in Italy, it is a value system. It represents prioritizing connection over transaction.
And you have to adapt. That's where the idiom comes in. When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
It's a cliche, but as the source points out, it's actually deep advice on psychological flexibility. It means you must suspend your own judgment and your own normal to survive and thrive in a new environment. If you fight the Roman way of doing things while you are in Rome, you will just be miserable.
You'll be the angry guy honking his horn while everyone else is enjoying a coffee.
Exactly. Adaptability means recognizing that your way isn't the only way.
And it's not just the work culture, it's the social customs. The source gets very specific here, the double kiss.
Yes. The friend had to get used to greeting people with a kiss on both cheeks.
And Emma, being British, is visibly horrified by this description. She says, in England, we're so reserved.
It's a great example of physical adaptability. Imagine the awkwardness if you aren't used to that level of intimacy.
It's a path.
You have to override your personal space instincts because that is the social currency of the new environment. If you recoil, you are being rude.
It creates a distinction between being a tourist and being a traveler.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
A tourist demands the environment change for them. A traveler changes for the environment.
And Emma talks about her memory of Rome wandering streets, getting lost, finding small cafes where the owners knew everyone's name. She engaged with the humanity of the place.
And John taps into that. He's planning a trip to Italy in the fall, and he says he's using it as a motivator to learn the language.
Right.
He doesn't want to be the guy pointing and shouting in English.
And Emma validates that. She says even trying to speak a little makes a huge difference. It opens doors.
Why does that matter so much, even if you are terrible at it?
Because it signals respect.
Yeah.
It signals, I am trying to enter your world rather than demanding you enter mine. It's an act of vulnerability.
Back to vulnerability.
And as we discussed with public speaking, vulnerability creates connection. That is the barrier to entry. If you can cross that barrier, the locals treat you differently.
So we've covered a lot of external changes, guitar, speaking, moving countries. But the source takes a turn here that I think is the most profound part of the conversation. John admits to a change that wasn't about a skill or a location. It was about who he is as a person.
His professional metamorphosis.
He admits to a major personality change. He says he used to be passive. He was afraid to speak in meetings. He worried constantly about what others thought. He felt his ideas weren't valid. Honestly, who hasn't felt that at some point in their career?
Is the definition of imposter syndrome. You feel like a fraud, so you stay quiet to avoid detection.
Yeah.
But what's incredible is that John didn't view this as a permanent personality trait.
Right.
He didn't say, well, I'm just an introvert or I'm just a quiet person.
That is the key. He treated his personality like he treated the guitar.
Exactly. He viewed assertiveness as a skill to be practiced, not a gene you were born with.
So how did he do it?
He describes the mechanics of his confidence. He read books. He took workshops.
Oh.
But the critical part, he says, I forced myself to speak up even when I felt uncomfortable.
There it is again, the discomfort. Just like the guitar chord hurt his hand, speaking up hurt his ego or his anxiety, but he did it anyway.
He applied force to overcome the inertia of his personality. And he had a cognitive shift regarding judgment. He realized not everyone will agree, and that is okay.
That's huge.
The goal is respectful articulation, not universal approval.
That is the superpower, the willingness to be disagreed with.
It's the antidote to people-pleasing. If your goal is for everyone to like you, you can never be assertive. Because assertiveness involves stating a position which inherently invites conflict. But if your goal is respectful articulation, then disagreement isn't a failure, it's just part of the process.
But again, and I love that this keeps coming up, he didn't do it alone.
No.
He mentions the mentor factor.
He admits he likely wouldn't have succeeded without a supportive mentor.
It's the recurring theme of this entire deep dive. Jennifer needed a guitar teacher. Emma needed a speaking club. John needed a mentor for his career.
Right.
We rarely change in a vacuum.
We are social creatures. We need external regulation. We need someone to see our potential when we can't see it ourselves. The mentor acts as a mirror, showing you the version of yourself that is capable of speaking up.
And this leads to what the source calls the knock-on effect.
The domino effect of growth. I love this part.
Emma observes that confidence is contagious. She says, confidence in one area no doubt has knock-on effects in others.
This is a powerful concept for anyone feeling stuck. When John learned to be assertive in meetings, a high-stakes environment, he didn't just become a better employee. He mentions it improved his personal relationships.
How does that transfer happen? I mean, a meeting is so different from a conversation with your partner.
Well, once you realize you can survive speaking your mind to your boss,
Right.
telling your friend that you don't want to go to that restaurant they picked seems trivial. You develop better boundaries. You learn to communicate your needs.
It resets your baseline for conflict. What felt scary before now feels manageable.
Exactly. And this connects to the idea of transferable skills. Now, usually when we hear that term in HR, we think, oh, I know how to use Excel, so I can use Google Sheets.
Right, technical skills, hard skills.
But the source argues that character traits are transferable skills.
Give me an example from the source.
Well, John mentioned Sarah's coding. He says coding isn't just about syntax, it's about analytical thinking.
Okay.
If you can think logically in code, you can think logically in business strategy. The underlying process is the same.
And the guitar, what does that transfer to?
The guitar teaches discipline. It teaches the ability to sit with frustration. If you can sit with the frustration of a G chord for 3 weeks without quitting, you can sit with the frustration of a difficult project at work without quitting. That is the transfer.
I love that. The skill isn't the act, it's the underlying discipline. It's how you package yourself. But of course, the road to acquiring these skills is paved with failure.
It is.
And sourdough bread.
We have to talk about the sourdough.
Emma tells this great anecdote. She tried to make sourdough bread during the praise. And let's be honest, sourdough is hard. It's chemistry.
It is a fickle beast. I've tried, I've failed.
And she failed miserably. She made a rock, a literal brick. But the key detail isn't the failure. It's what she did with the failure. She kept it a secret.
She bottled it up.
To bottle up. To repress feelings or struggles. Why do we do that? Why do we hide our bad bread?
Shame. Perfectionism. We live in a curated world. We scroll through Instagram and see everyone's perfect golden loaves.
There's a highlight reel.
And we think, if I show my failure, I am revealing that I am less than. We want to present a finished, polished version of ourselves. We don't want people to see the messy middle.
But as John points out, that secrecy is self-sabotage.
Totally.
He says if she had asked him or anyone for help, she might have gained insight. Oh, your starter wasn't active enough. Oh, your room was too cold.
Exactly. By bottling it up, she isolated herself with the failure. Bottling up leads to stagnation. Sharing leads to processing.
It also connects to John's story about the promotion. He shares that he almost turned down a promotion because he was afraid of the pressure. He was bottling up his insecurity.
He thought, I can't handle this responsibility. But he was keeping that fear inside.
And because he kept it inside, it grew. It became a monster.
Until he realized, probably through his mentor, that the fear was actually an indicator of growth. It was an opportunity. We are often our own biggest obstacles. We build these cages out of our own fears and then complain that we are trapped.
So bringing it all together, we've got muscle memory, we've got cultural adaptation, we've got assertiveness, and we've got sourdough. What is the final synthesis here? What's the big takeaway?
The source concludes that the ability to adapt is the most invaluable skill of all.
The meta skill.
Yes.
Yes.
The world changes fast. Industries change, technologies change. If you can master the language of change, if you can understand that muscle memory takes time, if you can accept the need for mentors, if you can tolerate the discomfort of being a beginner, you can handle anything.
It's a powerful message. You don't have to be born with these traits. You can build them one awkward guitar chord at a time.
And one terrifying public speech at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we let you go, let's quickly recap the key takeaways. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Sure, let's boil it down. Point 1, the physiology of practice.
You're right.
Muscle memory takes time and repetition. When you feel uncoordinated and frustrated, remember that is just your brain building the road. Don't quit during the construction phase.
Point 2, don't drift along. Use external accountability. Teachers, mentors, clubs. If you rely solely on your own willpower, you will likely negotiate your way out of the work. Anchor yourself to someone else.
Point 3, when in Rome. Adaptability requires psychological flexibility. You have to be willing to suspend your own judgment and change your rhythm to match your environment.
Yeah.
Whether that's a new country or a new company culture.
Point 4, assertiveness is a skill. It is not a gene. You can practice it. You can force yourself to speak up in low-stakes situations until it transfers to high-stakes ones.
And finally, point 5, don't bottle it up. Share your failures. Whether it's sourdough or a struggle at work, secrecy breeds shame.
And openness breeds solutions.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. We talked about the knock-on effect, the idea that improving one area spills over into others.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. If you look at your life right now, what is the one thing you are currently bottling up? Is it a desire to learn a skill, a struggle at work, a conversation you're afraid to have?
If you stop treating it as a secret, and started treating it as a skill to be practiced, maybe even got a teacher or a mentor for it, how might that confidence spill over into completely unrelated areas of your life?
If you learned to speak up in that one meeting, would you be a better partner at home? If you finally took those guitar lessons, would you be more disciplined in your career?
Everything is connected. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
It certainly is.
Something to chew on as you go about your week. Don't drift along, take a step. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.